Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel. Today is Wednesday again, so it's time for another new comic book review, and we're going to continue with our Man of Steel review. Today is issue 4, and I'll talk about Titans as well. There's a preview for the next issue of Titans at the back of this issue, and I just read the first Titans special last week setting up this new team, so I'll mention that a bit at the end. So issue 4 of Bendis's Man of Steel story arc with Rogal Zar. I will start with the good, and then I'll move into the bad. And there's a lot more on the side of the bad this time, I'll be honest with that up front. In terms of the good, I like the fact that this issue was pure action. For the most part, we have a couple of moments between the fights and whatnot, which I think we need for pacing. So, in terms of looking at this as one cohesive story from issue 1 to issue 6, I like this placement within it in terms of pacing. The art is going to be firmly on the bad side, but the one thing I will say about the art here that I did appreciate, and I don't know if this is from Bendis in his script or if this was Alex Sinclair, the artist this time, in putting this together, but I often appreciated the composition of the panels. The very first page, the splash page there, we have a close-up of Superman's eyeball, and he's seeing Rogal Zar in it, and this really does pick up right at the moment that the last issue left off. So it left you on a cliffhanger. It's solidly picking up at that point. I hate it when an issue leaves you on a cliffhanger and then the next issue starts moments after that, and then it tries to flash back to what happened. That's not good writing. If you're going to leave somebody on the cliff, you need to bring them back there and make good on that promise when they come back to the next issue. So I appreciate that the issue picked up where it did. And then in that framing, we see a close-up. We see the reflection of Rogal Zar in Superman's eye, but the eye, the pupil, and the capillaries coming off of it and everything, it doubles as Krypton exploding. And of course, Rogal Zar is supposed to be this new retcon of the end of Krypton. We haven't had things fully explained to us yet. But that was a neat image. I appreciated the double meaning of that. And Superman, in this issue, will finally start putting some of that together with some of the things that Rogal Zar says. On the very next page, I love the composition of that frame. We have a nice compositional triangle with Supergirl up to Superman down to Rogal Zar and the punch motion that Superman has given him. I appreciate that. So composition throughout is pretty solid. That's a very different thing from the art though, and we'll talk about that. In terms of panel layout, I do tend to think that in Bendis comics there's a few too many panels per page just as a general rule. But I did like how some of the panels moved succinctly to show you action. For example, this page here, we see this needle on top of the tower falling. We see this girl clueless. We know Superman's reacting to her. That's really good visual storytelling there. We don't even need any dialogue or captions there in the bottom half of the page. Far too many captions going on as a rule in the other panels, but I like that. Then on the next page, we follow this action, and we see her falling panel by panel by panel. I like that. These are static images, but that's part of the effect of watching a film or something like that. It's a neat experience that only comic books can provide, so I enjoyed that. And then we see Superman swooping in, the hand right there. That's really great. So many people just fly through comics, and they really only look at the images and maybe just a cursory look at the art, but this is how you should read comics really carefully, panel to panel, and I appreciated that many of the panel layouts were written with that in mind. I like that Superman is thinking through the battle. I like that we'll talk about the rage thing in a second, but I do like that he at least knows not to just react in blind rage, and I like that he's very careful about how hard to punch Rogal Zar in the middle of Metropolis. That makes perfect sense. That's exactly what Superman should do. We find out a bit more regarding the mystery of what happened to John and Lois, and I think we receive the right amount of information there for an issue 4. It's satisfying. They're not stringing us along too much. I'd still, at this point, I just really want to know what else is going on. I feel like they could have let us know a bit more, but then again, there are 2 more issues, so I understand if they're saving something for the end that has something to do there. I appreciate the fact that we don't have to sit through that whole preview that we had ruining our Action Comics 1000. I appreciate the fact that we didn't have to sit through that again. We just sort of have that couched in, and we see the 2 people, the 2 women who rescued Superman there once he was knocked unconscious. Green Lantern, the inclusion of Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, is great. I love that aspect because in a lot of these comic books and the solo run issues, these great heroes of immense power all on the same Earth, all in the same galaxy, and dealing with huge cosmic threats, But then you go into their solo titles, and just one of them at a time are only allowed to deal with these massive threats that sometimes people try to squeeze into their titles as well. It doesn't really make sense that all of the other heroes would just ignore it oftentimes. So it makes sense here that you got this huge cosmic threat, Rogol Zar. I like the fact that Hal Jordan's treated very much like a police officer. He said, I got reports of this. I came out to check it out. I have to call this in. I like that. That was a nice touch. I also liked the end, the final page of the issue. We have that same explosion. It mirrors the first image we saw in Superman's eyeball, looking at Rogol Zar, seeing the replication of Krypton's explosion there, that double meaning. And like at the end, this is the Fortress of Solitude. I don't like what's happening. I think it's utterly ridiculous of Bendis just to destroy and wipe out the Fortress of Solitude like he's doing. But I did like the symmetry of the images closing out this one issue arc within the greater arc of the run. So that pretty much wraps up what I liked about the issue. Let me start with some of the things I mentioned. The art. Oh, the art. The problem with the art, I think, I've thought about this, and I think that the way to really characterize what's going on is that it's cartoonish. The expressions that he gives people are not on par with the realism that's already been established in this run, or even in the DC's universe in general at this point. I know that different artists have different styles. Some of them are a little bit more expressionist rather than representational. But this is a level of expressionism that you would not expect to see in a Superman comic. This is something like a children's comic, like a My Little Pony comic. You should see expressions like this. This is ridiculous. This page here, for example, Rogol Zar is waiting to find out if there are other surviving Kryptonians, and specifically at one point even asks Superman if he has any children. Look at the expressions on Superman. I've heard, I think it was Mim Hedrum who likened this to Popeye, and that's a great analogy. It's cartoony. This is not up to the level of realism already established in the run. It deviates far too much, and it's an ugly style of expressionism as well. There's nothing Superman-like about this. So the art is really problematic, not up to par by any means. I don't know why Green Lantern has a flat top. He's drawn like he's some sort of military drill sergeant. Moving on from the art, though, we still have a problem with the dialogue. Not just the dialogue, people talking to each other, but the captions, what's going on in Superman's head. They're just some weird phrasings. And I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to be making of this. For example, when he says that, my cousin Kara is nothing but blind rage. She's right. She's right. Well, she didn't say, that's a descriptive term. She is this. This is what she's doing right now. Now, I understand the meaning of it. In that phrase, he's saying she's right to be angry. She should be angry. That's not a very Superman-like thing to say. I'll get to that in a moment. But let's just talk about the logic of the dialogue. She is nothing but blind rage. She's right. That's an incomplete thought. She's right to be angry, the sentence would say. If she had made a statement, then you could simply say she's right. But that's just an incomplete thought. That's not coherent, even for a caption box. Then we find the problem of what Superman is coming to with the completion of this thought. But suddenly I remember something Cyborg once said. If someone, something, anything comes down this hard and fast, they're counting on emotion. They're counting on me not stopping to think, for me to just react. Never in his life has Superman needed Cyborg to tell him this. At some point in his life, Superman would have been told this by Jonathan Kent. It proves how little Bendis truly knows about Superman as a character. He's done a pretty good job learning so far and keeping Superman within his iconic personality, but he's really starting to slip here. And I don't know if it's because he simply doesn't know any better, or if it's the social politics agenda showing through that we have to have the young black man come across as mentor and wise advisor to Superman. I don't know what the reasoning for that is, but that is not in keeping with Superman's character or mythology in any way, that he would need to be told this by Cyborg and have to recall it from Cyborg's bank of wisdom that he'd given him one day. Also, the fact that he's happy that Supergirl is nothing but blind rage. Superman is all about self-control. At every moment of every day, he's exerting self-control. This very issue even shows that in the moment I previously mentioned about having to gauge how hard he punches Rogol Zar so he doesn't shatter the city with the effect of it. Superman is always concerned about self-control. He wouldn't have to just recall this thing somebody told him about not reacting out of emotion, and he certainly would have drummed this lesson into Kara, to Supergirl, his cousin, who he trains. She'd be more prone to act on emotion, since she is younger at this point, but for him to simply say, yeah, it's right, it's good that she should be acting in blind rage. No. He might say something like, Kara, my cousin, is all blind rage. I understand that, but that would be the line there, Bendis. What the hell is up with your dialogue? What the hell is up with your internal monologues? Do you talk to people, Bendis? Do you take note of your own thoughts? Are your own thoughts this disjointed? Do you listen to how people speak? Because this is not it. Let's see, going through to see if I missed anything. I did like the brief moment we have of Jimmy Olsen on top of the Daily Planet building with the camera. But I guess this is Miss Poole coming up behind Perry White and wondering why Perry lets children on top of the roof. Because Jimmy Olsen, no matter how old he is, he should always be one of those characters who looks younger. The whole GQ Jimmy Olsen from the Supergirl show is completely ridiculous. That's not part of the canon or mythology in any way. Never has been. So I like the fact here, though, that not only does he still look young, but Perry White says, that's Jimmy Olsen. And Miss Poole, that's Jimmy Olsen? He's obviously got a name. He's obviously has a reputation for being a great photographer, even though he does look like a child. That's a nice little characterization moment just in those two panels there for Jimmy Olsen. So I did appreciate that. So overall, this issue is the worst issue of the run, in my estimation, by far. That's not to say there's nothing good about it. I did mention the good points about it. I know the next issue will be with a different artist, at least. I wish Bendis would learn from these mistakes. I'm sure he wrote this entire run before the first one hit the stands, but there is time for course corrections and rewrites once the audience gives feedback. Even just going back in some of these scene-to-scene moments, fixing some of this dialogue, the editor needs to step in here. And I know it's Bendis, and everybody's acting like Bendis is some godsend to comics, which he's just not. I don't know. It's a problem. This is the man who's going to be writing not only this Man of Steel miniseries, but also Superman comics and Action Comics. Didio, in his grand wisdom, has decided to give the entirety of Superman to this one person who can't get the character right in the fourth issue of a miniseries. It's a problem. Hopefully things will pick up. I will definitely let you know in the next issue. Moving on from Man of Steel, though, we have this preview at the end for Titans number 23. As I said, I picked up the special issue of Titans last week in which Dick Grayson is forming a new team. I like that setup. If you haven't read it, I won't spoil the issue, but I'll give you the general setup. I've been reading the Titans run of Rebirth since it started, and it was amazing to have that group of characters back together again. The Titans were together. We had Nightwing, Roy Harper as Red Arrow, we had Wally West as Flash, Omen, Donna Troy, Garth back as Tempest. Aqualad moved on to being Tempest. It was a great team. We had a good, solid chemistry there, built on solid relationships that were previously in place, and they were fun to hang out with. It was a fun team to follow on their adventures. Then it started getting a little crazy. Poured into some drama with Donna Troy, which wasn't a bad idea overall, but they broke the team up systematically over a long span of issues. This team that everyone loved seeing back together, that I was having so much fun with, broke them down. The Justice League doesn't trust them anymore. Some BS like that. Decommissions them. It's just ridiculous. Now Nightwing is putting together a team. The Justice League ends up giving their approval, but there's this weird disconnect between Nightwing saying that I'm not asking for approval, I'm telling you what I'm going to do, but at the same time he's following their orders and letting them dictate this and that. The new team he puts together, there are some things I like about it. I like the fact that this issue is going to age Raven and Beast Boy back up a bit. It's really ridiculous, the division between Titans and New Titans, because they had some of these characters who you've always known were around the same age, now pretending that some are really young, and even the art would draw them as really young, like Raven. Raven's not a 14-year-old girl. Now she's older. Now she's somebody that has worked with Grayson before. Same thing with Beast Boy. It's absurd that Starfire's not in this team, but I understand that she's going to be doing something with Wonder Woman and some of the Justice League stuff. Still, she should be there. That was a problem with the previous division of Titans and Teen Titans. Starfire on the Teen Titans, but Nightwing and his old crew on the Titans. Well, what about all of the history between Starfire and Nightwing? They alluded to it a little bit here and there, but it just didn't make sense. The division was nonsense. In this team's makeup, we still have Donna Troy. As I said, Raven and Beast Boy are added. Then we bring in John Henry Irons' niece. I've forgotten her name, and I've forgotten the superhero name she goes by. She's that forgettable. She's that bland. She's not a bland character overall. In the Superwoman run, which I'd read also since the beginning of Rebirth until it was canceled, John Henry's niece was a decent character, but she seems forced in a lot of places, and she's forced into this story, absolutely. I wonder if it's any coincidence that Bendis is now at DC Comics, and now the DC analog of Riri Williams is coming up to a more prominent role in the DC universe, because that's what John Henry Irons' niece is. She's also got her steel suit. She's an amazing technical, scientific wizard, because young minority women always are. All these amazing powers, and everybody's in awe of her, and they seek her out for her amazing abilities. She's incredibly uninteresting as a character. She's going to have to be written much, much better if she's going to be engaging at all. It was neat to see Miss Martian come into the comics a bit, because you don't see her often, especially you haven't seen her at all as of late. But she's in here as a liaison, sort of a babysitter, they even say, between the Titans team and the Justice League. I'm sorry, this is Dick Grayson. This is Nightwing. The very first Robin. You don't treat him like a 12-year-old. The logic of the DC universe now that Jeff Johns is on doing other things just as a writer or whatever, and Didio and Lee have firmly stepped back in and asserting their control, the logic of the Rebirth universe is just out the window now. We're going in all of these crazy places, and this is just one example. The Justice League would trust Dick Grayson Nightwing. This is ridiculous to have a Miss Martian of all people step in as their babysitter. It's not making any sense. The little preview at the end of the Man of Steel issue here alludes to the setup of the team, and I do like that setup of the team, that because of the crack in the source wall, there are a lot of people on Earth with emerging powers because of the energies that are coming through and bathing the Earth. So they need a team to go out and assess those people, to help them deal with the new powers and whatnot, and to assess those who are threats and all of that. I like that setup, but the execution so far is pretty shoddy. I'm going to keep reading it to see if it gets any better, because I do love, like I said, the fact that Raven, Nightwing, Beast Boy are all on the same team again. But it's on thin ice, and that's not a great start. So I do have lots more to say about the state of the DC comic universe in general, and I will say that very soon, especially with the new reveals of the Heroes in Crisis event and all of this stuff that's coming up. Until I get my thoughts together in a video, I will direct you toward The Fan Man again, his recent podcast of The Geek Show. It's on the channel, links in the description, top right hand corner, and all of that. He has some thoughts about the Heroes in Crisis line coming and where the DC Universe is going in general. Chris and I agree for the most part. We might disagree on some specifics of this and that, but we always agree on that big picture thing. And he's definitely a channel worth checking out, so I definitely recommend that. Go give him a subscription and listen to him. He's also a lot funnier than I am and more entertaining. I tend to do the dry professor thing. He's more late night comedy about his delivery, and that's a bit more user-friendly often, so check that out. Otherwise, thanks for all the new likes, subscribes. I appreciate how the channel is growing. Please keep sharing. And do follow me on Twitter, because I am putting together some polls, as I said in the previous video, to find out which titles, films, and graphic novels you would like me to do live stream reviews of eventually. So catch me there. It's at Michael Kreitzer. Links in the description. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.